Alright, hello. I'm going to take you through a demonstration of installing the tools required for ChipWhisperer. Um, so, the documentation generally is going to be held at chipwhisperer.com, which will take you to this assembler page. And you can look at the ChipWhisperer release page. So, if you click on ChipWhisperer release or on the left hand side here, it'll have all the latest releases, and you'll have to look at before running. It'll have some special information, and there may be some details of current or later releases, but generally you can just see the software setup page. So this is all the links I'm going to use. All right, so the first thing you need is Python 2.7. So the latest version for Windows. You can just download, so Python 2.6 is available, it tells you, so you get this. And I use the 32 bits generally. Some of the packages will only run on the 32-bit version of Python. You can have 32 and 64 installed together if you want. Nothing in ChipWhisperer will need 64 bits. That is to say, nothing uses enough RAM that you would require it. So we'll download that and wait for it to download and then run the installer. Next, we'll have to go through all of the install procedures for various required add-ons, which are listed here. And there's a few optional add-ons depending about what other things you want. So, just run the installer here once it's done. Alright, and basically we just use default, so I install into that C Python 27 directory. And please wait. It'll just complete the install here. So once this is done, maybe I'll start going through. So there's a number of other packages we need that work with Python. So PySerial, for example, PySide, which is one of the major ones. If you want, you can always download the latest versions from the main page, which is linked. So, for example, here we have PySerial 2.7. So you also have to make sure there may be options of what version of Python the installer will be working with. Obviously, because you installed or are installing Python 2.7, you want to make sure you get the Python 2.7 version. And there also may be options around, here we go, options around 32 versus 64-bit. So again, you've got to make sure about that. So, so here you can say this is for Python 2.4, 2.7, and there's another one for Python 3. Again, I'm using all Python 2.7 here. So we'll just download that installer, and we'll do the same thing for PySide. And I'll just go through and run each installer. So it should pick out Python 2.7, and it'll run it. Alright, so PySide, it says, what do you need for Windows? And again, Windows 32, Python 2.7. So we just get the latest version. And that'll download. So we're done with PySerial. NumPy. Oh, in the background here, I'll install PySide. And again, all of the Python installers you'll see more or less look the same. This one takes a little longer because it's bigger. Just wait for it to finish here. Here we go. All done. Okay, so NumPy. And sometimes these links, obviously I've just put links into specific versions, as well as direct links to the installers. They may or may not be the latest, so here I've linked to 1.7, so you can always check if there's a later version available. As a note, also these direct links for example, for Windows, they go to another site that just packages together a whole bunch of installers, which is actually quite convenient. It makes stuff a lot easier. So again, we always look for, I just use the latest version with Pi 2.7, and the MKL builds here, it tells you are higher performance. Again, as long as it's Pi 2.7, so you could alternatively use 1.7.2. I don't think it really matters for our stuff. As a note, if you download the wrong version of this, so say you needed the, say you accidentally downloaded the 64-bit version down further, what would end up happening is when it goes to install it, it'll say it can't find Python because it's looking for a very specific version of Python. Oh. We're just waiting for SciPy. Here we are. And again, I'll just pick the latest version, 32-bit, Python 2.7. So to install SciPy, we have to first install NumPy, so we wait for it to finish. And we also need this other package, PyQtGraph. Again, Windows 32, it doesn't matter the Python version for this one. And we just install it. So there are the order listed on this page. The dependencies should all work, so we have to install NumPy first. Before you can install PyQtGraph, you have to have both of these. So these will be the bare minimum required to install, to run ChipWhisperer and Analyzer. If you want to actually talk to the hardware, there's actually a handful of more modules you need. So for example, for the ChipWhisperer Rev 2 capture hardware, we need this PyUSB. So you'll have to download that as well. So we can download files. Get the 1.0. Here there's some different versions, so I'll just use the latest beta. And I just downloaded a zip file here. There we go, PyUSB. So as a note, the zip file, the installation procedure is a little bit different. So we basically just have to unzip this somewhere. So I'm just going to copy and paste it back here. And then you click up to the top here and you copy wherever you've unzipped it. What we actually need to run is this setup .py. So I go to the start menu. I type cmd, so this will bring up the command prompt, and click there. And this gives us this window. So I'm going to go cd, right click, paste, and this puts me wherever this PyUSB is. I now just go python setup.py install. So this is the command to install the PyUSB module. It doesn't have its own Windows installer. Oops. So if it comes up with that, what's happened is that Python isn't actually in my path. So you can set it in your path, which you'll probably want to. Alternatively, you can point specifically to the Python exe. So there I've done that. So python.exe. So I've put a full list of the path, setup.py install. And if there's any requirements, it would tell you about that. So there we go. But that worked fine. And now I've installed PyUSB. Some of these modules are done downloading. So I'm first going to install numpy. Close this in the background. If you want to use some of the other boards, for example, the Sakura boards, there's some additional packages you need to install. So we just wait for that to finish. So there we go. So we're done with NumPy. We still need SciPy. So in the meantime, we can install FTD2XX. And we can also, we'll do this first, and then I'll show you how to modify the path. So the FTD2XX is basically it's on this GitHub page. So there's a bit of a different method. We have to hit download zip to it. And we copy the FTD2XX master. Again, copy it out of the folder. And once again, we'll see this setup file in there. And we'll just cd to that directory. And we have to do the same trick because Python isn't in the path. So I go C Python 27 python.exe setup.py install. So when it ran this, it actually came up with an error because there's additional modules from this base Python installation seem to be missing. So it needs something called setup tools. So again, this is only if you want to support the SASBO W, Sakura G, or Sasibo G2 board that you need this special one. So to get it working, you will have to first install setup tools, then go back to install FTD2XX, and then install the D2XX drivers. I'm not actually going to do that entirely here because I want to show you the sort of most basic installation to get the ChipWhisperer hardware running. There'll be another demonstration to talk specifically about the Sakura G. So one other thing that you might want is that it might be nice to have, when you type Python at the command line, it just comes up. So to do this, we need to edit the path. So if you type path, this is on Windows 7, edit the environmental variables for your account or for the system, depending if you want it system-wide. I'm going to do it system-wide here. And you get this system properties window under environmental variables. You can see the system variable has the path here. So all we have to do is at the end of it, so this is all of the places it's going to be searching. I'm just going to add :C Python 2.7. And where that comes from is just wherever I installed Python. So there's no dot in there, actually, it's just Python 2.7. And I don't think you need any other paths, but we'll find out. Okay. So we're still waiting on SciPy to finish downloading here. Once it's finished, I can install that and then install PyQtGraph. In the meantime, what I'm going to go on to is getting the ChipWhisperer software. So the easiest way is just to download the zip from here. If you want the latest and greatest, you can clone the Git repository, which is shown in Appendix 2 here. So this, you have to use something like Git extensions or whatnot, and this will get you the latest code. The latest code could possibly be broken, so I make no claims about that. All right, so we have to decide where we want to keep ChipWhisperer. It's totally up to you. So, for example, I'm actually going to make a new folder on my hard drive and C ChipWhisperer. And I'll copy out of the zip file the entire project. When we install the ChipWhisperer stuff, it's done a little bit differently than a regular Python module. I install it with a bunch of references using the develop system. You don't actually have to do that. You could install it like a regular Python module if you want. I only recommend the develop right now because the system is changing quite rapidly, so there's always lots of changes. So now that we've added the Python to the path, what you can see is that if I again open that, remember I hit the Windows Start button here, type cmd, get a command prompt, and if you type Python, it'll open the Python interpreter. If you want to quit, you have to just type quit with a 2 brackets like that. All right, so now what we need to do is we go to where we're keeping the ChipWhisperer, and again the same thing. I cd to that directory, and actually change to the software directory is where I want to be. And I lied. I don't change to the software directory first. I change to the OpenADC directory, and then in there's control software Python. So this is all written out in the full document, or on the wiki here. It tells you exactly what to do. All right, so again, we now have to run python setup.py develop. So not install, develop. And it gives us this error again. We need setup tools for this. So I'm going to install setup tools. So you can download it from this site, or there will be a direct link from here shortly. So I'm actually going to use, there's a page here with pre-made installers for most of Windows stuff. So we go to setup tools, and again, Python, we just get the latest version, Python 2.7, Windows 32. And we run setup tools. And we just click through. There we go. Okay. Looking good so far. And I can run that again. And finished. As a warning, I haven't actually installed SciPy yet, which it may error out and require you to install first. It wouldn't run right now for sure. Depending on when you get the setup file, it may or may not properly check for all the dependencies. Right now it doesn't, but in the future it will. So again, now I'm going to cd to the software directory with the other setup. So there's 2 setup files. And I run the same command, python setup.py develop. And bam, installed. So now your Python installer, or your Python method, knows all about the ChipWhisperer stuff. So in order to run it, I still need to run the SciPy installer, which finished downloading. Oops. So it seems like the SciPy installer is damaged. So the other thing we can install is PyQtGraph while I'm waiting for the system to finish here. So PyQtGraph I had downloaded before, and it depended on NumPy, but not SciPy, I believe, at least to install. All right, so close all this crap off. All right, so this the SciPy binary is broken. So it seems it didn't download the full thing, so I'm just going to retry it here. and we'll basically wait. I'll pause the video because I've stalled as much as I could installing everything else. So I'll wait till this finishes re-downloading SciPy. I've already installed PyQt Graph. MySQL you can install if you want. Again, this is only for the MySQL support. So we'll wait till this re-downloads here. Alright, so I switched to downloading SciPy from the SourceForge project where they have a Windows 32 installer. So this version seems to work anyway. I don't know why the other one kept getting cut off during the download, so there's some issue with that server. So we'll just try again anyway. There we go. So now things are working. So once the installer finishes, we should have all the prerequisites for the basic version of the ChipWhisperer stuff to work. So we do that, and we hit finish. Close this, close this. So at this point, we can actually run ChipWhisperer. So in wherever you unzipped it, there's software, ChipWhisperer. There's now these two main directories, analyzer or capture, and they do more or less what you expect. So if you want to test first, you can run the analyzer. So you basically just double click on it. It'll open a Python window, and a second later that will should open the ChipWhisperer analyzer. So if you don't, it'll print a message about what's missing. If it's too fast for you to see, what you can do is cd to where it's running. So, oops. Here we have the ChipWhisperer analyzer.py, and you just run that directly. And you might, if you haven't installed Python on your path, you'll have to say Python ChipWhisperer analyzer. So in this case, it tells us we need this config object file, which at the time wasn't listed. So sometimes the latest list on the software setup page doesn't have everything. And that'll be fixed by the time you see this, but you may run into this, especially if you're using the Git version. So you just basically have to find where the file is held. So in this case, I need config obj, and we just need to download it. So there's different spots to get the source from. Here I have a tar.gz, which on Windows I won't be able to extract because I haven't, on this example Windows, I don't have any of the extractors that can deal with that. So instead I just found a zip off SourceForge. And so hopefully you've gotten used to how this works now. You extract it somewhere, open a command prompt, and I cd to wherever it's held, and I just go Python setup install, and then it installs it. And if we switch back to analyzer, let's try this again. So there's a few things that come up as required but aren't actually required. So this MySQL you don't need. There may be some other messages depending what version you have. There's some messages printed there that you could probably ignore. So at this point it's just the ChipWhisperer analyzer comes up. The very first time it opens, as a note, it doesn't always set up properly like you've said. You can see here. So all you have to do is I drag this to be reasonable. I drag the waveform display dock to be about where I want it. Maybe I'll center them. And these three windows here, and it's up to you what you can do. You can overlay them if you want, for example. This is normally how I have it. So I have debug logging, console script command. It's totally up to you. As another note, if you want to see what is missing, so you remember I said that MySQL wasn't supported, you can go to help enabled modules and it'll tell you features that are missing because you don't have certain modules. So that's the analyzer, and we'll do the same thing for the capture. So again, there's some notes that stuff's disabled because you're missing modules. In this case, some of the smart card targets are disabled. I don't really care right now. And we have the exact same thing as before. Make those about the right size. And we can view disabled modules here. So in this case, there's a whole bunch that have been disabled. I don't have Visa, so I don't have Visa scopes. The FD2XX, so you can see we've enabled the Sasibo. And actually the Sakura probably won't work if you try to use it. And MySQL is disabled. So this little window here will give you an idea of what is needed if you want to get certain features. If you're not using things like, if you don't have a Sasibo board, then you just do not care about installing this. Same if you don't have a Sakura, you don't care. So you don't have to install every single module that you can because it might not matter. So that was very basic how to set up the Python environment to run ChipWhisperer Capture and ChipWhisperer Analyzer. There'll be some more videos showing you how to set up the drivers and whatnot for specifically for the ChipWhisperer hardware and doing your first captures with that. So you can look for those videos and those details.